Imagine a life where everything you've worked for, everything you've built, suddenly starts to crumble around you. Betrayal, deception, and sabotage from the people you trusted the most. For Dylan, this wasn't just a nightmare, it was his reality. But through every setback, Dylan discovers that true strength comes not from never falling, but from rising after every fall. This is a story of resilience, of overcoming impossible odds, and of rebuilding a life from the ashes. Join us as we take you through a journey of loss, love, and the unyielding will to start over. Will Dylan rebuild his life and business? Will he find redemption and peace? Stay tuned as we dive into his powerful story. Grab your seat, because the journey is just beginning. Dylan returned home after another long, exhausting day at his tech startup. Despite the booming success of his business, Dylan always felt like something was missing in his family life. He hung his jacket on the coat rack and placed his briefcase down, but his eyes couldn't shake the strange silence that filled the house. There was no laughter, no light conversations that used to fill the air between him and his wife, Hannah. A sense of emptiness began to creep over him. He walked into the living room and looked around. Everything seemed the same, but something felt different. It was like when you know you're losing something important, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. "Dylan?" he called out. A moment of silence passed before Hannah emerged from the kitchen. She smiled, but the warmth in her expression was gone. She looked tired, her eyes slightly red. Dylan felt a pang of unease. "What's wrong?" Dylan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Nothing, just a little tired." "Dinner's ready," Hannah said, her voice sounding strangely off. Dylan nodded, but the odd feeling lingered. He couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. They had been a happy couple, sharing everything in their lives. But now, a sense of distance had crept in. In the following days, Dylan noticed subtle changes in Hannah's behavior. She started spending more time on her phone, and he often found her looking at it in a rush, as if hiding something. Dylan grew increasingly uneasy. Part of him wanted to trust his wife, but another part couldn't ignore the growing suspicion. One evening, as Hannah took a shower, Dylan couldn't resist his curiosity. He picked up the phone she had left on the coffee table, not thinking he would discover anything. But when he unlocked it, everything became clear. The messages weren't from friends or family, they were from Ryan, his best friend and business partner. The affectionate words and intimate conversations between them stunned Dylan, shattering the reality he had known. His heart pounded, not from pain immediately, but from shock. Ryan, the man he considered a lifelong friend, had betrayed him. And Hannah, the woman he had built his life with, was involved with him in ways Dylan could never have imagined. Dylan set the phone down, sitting frozen. He felt disoriented, unable to process what he had just uncovered. He couldn't ignore the betrayal, and he knew something had to be done. But he didn't know what to do next. From that moment, Dylan decided he wouldn't sit idly by and suffer in silence. He needed proof, and he would make Ryan and Hannah pay for what they had done. Dylan was a strategic man, always thinking before acting, and he would plan this meticulously. He installed hidden cameras around the house to capture every interaction and movement between Hannah and Ryan. He didn't overlook a single detail. The more he reviewed the footage and evidence, the more he realized the depth of the betrayal. But he didn't act out of raw emotion, he was gathering information. And he knew exactly what he would do with it. One day, while reviewing financial documents at his company, Dylan made another shocking discovery. Ryan wasn't just betraying him personally, he was embezzling funds from the company. Dylan recognized irregularities in the accounts, false invoices, unauthorized transfers, and hidden transactions. These discrepancies were difficult to spot for most people, but Dylan knew his business inside and out. Dylan started to prepare his next steps. He would expose Ryan for embezzlement and destroy everything Ryan had built. By now, Dylan had no empathy left. Ryan and Hannah would both face the consequences of their actions. Dylan didn't rush his move. He knew everything had to be perfect, that everything would need to fall into place. He began collecting all the evidence of Ryan's financial misconduct. The forged documents, the suspicious bank transfers, and the emails linking Ryan to the fraudulent activities, everything was carefully compiled. One day, Dylan sent the evidence anonymously to the board of directors, along with a letter detailing Ryan's illegal actions. Within hours, the company launched an investigation. The authorities got involved, and Ryan was unable to explain the financial irregularities. Dylan watched as Ryan's empire started to crumble. The downfall was swift, and Ryan found himself in deep legal trouble. Dylan felt a cold sense of satisfaction watching as Ryan's world fell apart. There was no escape for him now. A week later, Dylan decided it was time to confront Hannah. He had prepared himself for this moment, knowing it would be painful, but he could no longer delay the inevitable. He called her to meet him in the living room, the same place where they had shared so many memories. When she entered, their eyes met, but this time, there was no warmth in the look they shared. Dylan handed her the phone he had found, pointing to the messages between her and Ryan. "Hannah, I know everything. You can't hide it anymore." "I know about the affair," Dylan said, his voice cold and firm. There was no more room for doubt or forgiveness. Hannah lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. "Dylan, I didn't mean for it to happen. I'm so sorry." Dylan let out a bitter laugh. "Sorry isn't enough anymore. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking full custody of Zoe." Ryan's embezzlement was exposed, and he was arrested. He faced years in prison, his business and reputation ruined. His friends and associates turned their backs on him, and he was left alone to face the consequences of his greed. Hannah, although not facing legal consequences, was socially ostracized. Her family disowned her, and she was left to grapple with the consequences of her betrayal. She lived in isolation, consumed by regret. Zoe, though young, witnessed everything unfold. Even at her age, she understood the pain and the lessons. Despite it all, she remained by her father's side, offering him comfort and support through the difficult times. Dylan began to rebuild, both his business and his personal life. The company, though shaken, recovered under his leadership. He focused on his work and started to build new professional relationships, including one with Emma, a long-time, trusted associate. Emma had been with him from the early days of his startup, and she became an invaluable partner as they worked together to grow the business. Dylan also focused on his children. Zoe and Jack adjusted to their new lives, and though it was hard, they learned to adapt. They understood that family meant loyalty, and they stood by Dylan, knowing that no matter what, he would always protect them. Dylan moved forward, leaving the past behind. He no longer dwelled on the betrayal. With Emma by his side, both professionally and personally, they formed a deeper connection. They built a bond based on mutual respect, trust, and shared goals. Dylan no longer lived in the shadow of his past. He had learned valuable lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of never letting betrayal define you. With his children by his side, Dylan was ready to embrace the future with optimism, knowing that the best was yet to come. As Dylan's company began to flourish once again, he found himself relying more and more on Emma. She was sharp, level-headed, and had a knack for seeing things from a perspective that helped Dylan grow as both a businessman and a person. Over time, their professional relationship deepened, and it wasn't long before they started spending more time together outside of work. Their connection was natural. Emma understood Dylan in ways few people did. She knew about his pain, the betrayal he had suffered, and the weight of his responsibilities as a father. He admired her strength and intelligence, qualities he had been missing in his life. For the first time since his marriage fell apart, Dylan began to believe in the possibility of love again, but this time, he wasn't rushing into it. He needed to rebuild slowly, on his own terms. One evening, as they worked late in the office, their usual casual conversation turned into something deeper. They talked about everything: life, the future, their dreams. Emma confessed that she had always admired Dylan's drive and ambition, but also saw the vulnerability he rarely showed others. "Dylan, you've been through so much," Emma said softly, looking up from the papers they had been reviewing. "And yet, you've come out stronger on the other side. You've rebuilt your life, and your company is thriving. I don't think many people could have done that." Dylan smiled, grateful for her words, but there was an undercurrent of uncertainty in him. "I didn't do it alone," he replied. "You've been here with me, every step of the way. And I'm not just talking about work." There was a brief silence between them, a moment that felt like the world had paused. Dylan took a deep breath and then spoke again. "I've spent so much time being angry, resentful, and focused on the past. But being here, with you, I'm beginning to realize that maybe it's time to look forward. To move forward." Emma's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. "You deserve to be happy, Dylan. I want that for you." And in that moment, Dylan realized that he wasn't just rebuilding his company, he was rebuilding his life. And perhaps, he was finally ready to open his heart again, this time to someone who truly understood him. At home, Dylan focused on being the best father he could be to Zoe and Jack. It wasn't easy, especially with the shadow of the past lingering, but Dylan was determined. He made sure to spend quality time with his children, taking them on weekend trips and ensuring they always knew they were loved and supported. Zoe, in particular, had grown up fast. She had seen her parents' marriage crumble, and while she was still young, she understood the weight of the situation. Dylan had made it clear that she didn't have to carry the burden of his pain, but she insisted on helping him however she could. Her maturity astounded him, and he could see how much she had learned from the experience, about loyalty, trust, and the importance of family. One weekend, as they were all sitting around the dinner table, Zoe asked her father, "Dad, do you think you'll ever get remarried?" Dylan paused, glancing at Jack, who was quietly eating his food. He hadn't expected the question, but he wasn't surprised. Zoe was always one to get straight to the point. "I don't know, Zoe," Dylan replied honestly. "I'm not sure if I'm ready for that just yet. I've been through a lot, and I'm still figuring things out. But I do know that whatever happens, I'll always be here for you and Jack. You're my priority." Zoe smiled, reaching out to take his hand. "I think you should be happy, Dad. You deserve it." Dylan squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of warmth flood through him. Zoe was right. He did deserve happiness. And although he had suffered through so much pain, he was finally beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As time passed, life seemed to settle into a new rhythm for Dylan. His company was doing well, his relationship with Emma was blossoming, and his children were thriving. But, as with any new beginning, challenges arose that tested his resolve. One afternoon, Dylan received a call from his lawyer about the final proceedings of his divorce from Hannah. Although he had filed for divorce months ago, there were still legal battles to settle, especially concerning the division of assets and custody arrangements for Zoe and Jack. Despite everything that had happened, Dylan was still dealing with the fallout from his past. Meanwhile, in the business world, things were also heating up. Dylan's company had attracted the attention of investors who saw potential in the tech industry. But the pressure to expand quickly and manage expectations was taking a toll on Dylan. He found himself working long hours, struggling to balance his personal life with his professional commitments. Emma, noticing his stress, approached him one evening. "You've been pushing yourself too hard," she said, her voice concerned. "You need to take a step back. You can't do everything on your own." Dylan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. I just want to make sure everything works out, for the kids, for the company, for us." Emma stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to do it all alone. We're a team now. We'll figure it out together." Her words were exactly what he needed to hear. Dylan realized that he had spent so many years trying to control everything, trying to fix everything on his own, but he didn't have to anymore. He had Emma by his side, and together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. As the months passed, Dylan's relationship with Emma deepened. They continued to work together, building the company in their personal lives. And though Dylan had healed in many ways, there were still moments when he questioned his future. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, enjoying the warmth of the setting sun, Emma turned to him. "Dylan, I've been thinking about us. About the future." Dylan looked at her, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What's on your mind?" "I think we're ready. Ready for the next step," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know we've both been through a lot, but I believe in us. I believe in what we're building." Dylan's heart skipped a beat. He had thought about this moment often, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure what to say. But as he looked into Emma's eyes, he realized that he didn't need to overthink it. He knew what he wanted. "I believe in us too," Dylan said, his voice soft but certain. "Let's take that next step, together." And with that, Dylan knew that he was finally stepping into a future full of hope, love, and the possibility of happiness. The past had shaped him, but it would not define him any longer. The following months were a whirlwind of changes for Dylan. With Emma's support, he had been able to maintain a delicate balance between his personal and professional life. The company continued to expand, attracting more investors and partners, while at home, things were starting to feel more stable. Dylan was learning how to be a better father, a better partner, and most importantly, he was finally starting to understand how to take care of himself. Zoe and Jack had settled into their new routine. Zoe, ever the wise soul, was thriving academically and socially, while Jack, though still a bit shy, was becoming more confident each day. Dylan cherished their moments together, knowing that the pain from their past would always be part of them, but it didn't have to define their future. Emma had become an integral part of their lives. She wasn't just a business partner anymore, she was family. She often joined them for dinner, helping Dylan with the kids and offering her support in ways that felt natural. Dylan found himself thinking about their future more and more, wondering where this path would lead them. One quiet evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Dylan turned to Emma. "You've become so important to me," he said quietly, his voice filled with a sense of gratitude. "I don't know how I would have managed everything without you." Emma smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. "I'm glad I could be there for you, Dylan. You've been through so much, and I've watched you come out stronger, but you don't have to do it alone anymore." Dylan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in years, he realized how much Emma had become a source of strength for him. She was not just a partner in business, but in life. "I've been thinking," Dylan continued, taking a deep breath. "Maybe it's time for us to take another step. We've been working together, building the company, and I think we're ready to build something more, together." Emma's eyes widened with surprise, and then a smile spread across her face. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Dylan chuckled, a nervous excitement bubbling inside him. "I think it's time we take the next step. Maybe, we should get married. What do you think?" Emma's laughter was soft but genuine. "I think you're absolutely right," she said, her hand reaching for his. "Let's do it, Dylan. Let's build the future we've always dreamed of." As they embraced, Dylan felt a deep sense of peace. The pain of his past had faded, and in its place was the promise of something new. The future, no longer clouded by betrayal, was clear and bright. As Dylan and Emma's relationship grew stronger, so did the challenges that came with managing a thriving business. The tech industry was constantly changing, and there were always new hurdles to overcome. With more investors showing interest, Dylan knew that the next step would require tough decisions, not just for him, but for his entire company. There was one particular project that had caught the attention of the media, a new product that Dylan and Emma had been developing for months. It was innovative, groundbreaking even, and it had the potential to elevate their company to new heights. But with that potential came immense pressure. The launch date was quickly approaching, and everyone involved knew that there was no room for failure. Dylan spent long nights at the office, working alongside Emma to perfect the product, meet deadlines, and negotiate with partners. But the stress was starting to take a toll. He was losing sleep, feeling the weight of expectations on his shoulders. Emma noticed his exhaustion but was careful not to push him too hard. She knew that Dylan's drive was unyielding, but she also knew that his well-being mattered more than any business venture. One evening, after another late night at the office, Emma sat across from Dylan, who was staring at his computer screen, his eyes bloodshot and tired. She put down her tablet and looked at him seriously. "Dylan, you need to take a break. You can't keep going like this. The company needs you, yes, but you need to be healthy, too." Dylan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. It's just. I've worked so hard for this. I can't afford to fail now." Emma leaned in, her voice soft but firm. "Dylan, you've already built something incredible. The company is successful, but it's not just about the business. It's about your health, your happiness, and your family. We'll get through this together. But you need to take care of yourself." Dylan stared at her, realizing that she was right. For all the years he had spent focusing on work, he had neglected his own well-being. He wasn't just doing this for the company or the investors, he was doing it for himself, too. "All right," he said, finally conceding. "I'll take a step back. We'll figure it out, but I'm not doing it alone." Emma smiled, relieved. "That's all I ask, Dylan." After much planning and preparation, the day of the product launch arrived. Dylan and Emma had decided to work together as a team, each handling different aspects of the presentation. Dylan would handle the technical side and the big picture vision, while Emma would take charge of the financial projections and ensure that all investors were on board. The event was held in a sleek, modern conference room filled with executives, potential partners, and media representatives. The buzz in the air was palpable as the guests eagerly awaited the unveiling of the new product. Dylan stood in front of the crowd, his nerves almost getting the better of him. It wasn't just the product's success that weighed heavily on his mind, it was the future of the company, his future, and his family's future. But when Emma gave him an encouraging nod from the back of the room, Dylan took a deep breath and began. As he spoke about the vision behind the product, the innovation it represented, and the potential it had to change the industry, his confidence grew. The crowd was engaged, and the energy in the room was infectious. When the presentation ended, the applause was overwhelming. The product was a hit, and the room was buzzing with excitement. Investors were already lining up, eager to get in on the ground floor of the new technology. Dylan and Emma shared a quiet moment together, exchanging smiles of relief and triumph. They had done it. They had made it through the pressure, and it had paid off. With the successful product launch behind them, Dylan and Emma found themselves at the beginning of a new chapter, not only in their professional lives but also in their personal lives. Their relationship had grown even stronger, and the bond they shared became the foundation for everything else. As Dylan looked back on everything he had endured, his marriage to Hannah, the betrayal by his best friend, the years of rebuilding, he realized that it had all led him here. He had lost much, but he had gained more than he ever expected. His children, his career, and most of all, Emma, had become his new family. One evening, as Dylan and Emma sat together in their new home, watching the sunset once again, he turned to her. "I never thought I'd be here, Emma. Not after everything that's happened. But somehow, everything feels right. With you, with the kids, with the company. I feel like I've found my way." Emma smiled, her eyes full of love. "You've always known the way, Dylan. You just needed to trust yourself again." And in that moment, Dylan knew that whatever the future held, he was ready. With Emma by his side, his children by his side, and a business that was thriving, the world felt full of possibilities. The past had shaped him, but it would no longer define him. He was finally in control of his own future. As Dylan's life began to settle into a comfortable rhythm, the future held both promise and new challenges. His business, now a leading player in the tech industry, was expanding rapidly. Emma had proven to be an invaluable partner in both their professional and personal lives, and their relationship continued to strengthen. The couple was preparing for their wedding, and Dylan felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. However, just as Dylan began to believe that everything was finally falling into place, a new, unexpected challenge surfaced. One afternoon, Dylan received an email from an unknown source. It was a short message with an attached file. Curiosity piqued, he opened it and found a detailed report that appeared to be about his company. It outlined what seemed to be deliberate discrepancies in the company's financials, some of them eerily similar to the kind of fraud that Ryan had committed in the past. At first, Dylan brushed it off as a prank or a mistake. But the more he dug into the report, the more it became apparent that someone had insider knowledge. This wasn't just an attack on the company, it was an attempt to sabotage everything he had worked so hard to build. What is this? Dylan muttered to himself, his stomach sinking. His thoughts immediately went to Ryan, but he knew that Ryan had been dealt with long ago, leaving behind only the remnants of his betrayal. But this new threat felt different, more subtle, and much harder to trace. Despite his success, Dylan had always kept an eye on the past, particularly with regard to those who had betrayed him. Ryan's actions, though a distant memory, had left a permanent mark on Dylan's psyche. He had always wondered if there would ever be someone else, someone hidden in the shadows, who would attempt to bring him down again. That evening, Dylan shared his concerns with Emma. "I got an anonymous email today," he began, his voice tight with frustration. "Someone's trying to sabotage the company. It's like they know everything about our finances, about the way we work. And it's too close to the fraud Ryan committed. The patterns are eerily similar." Emma's expression turned serious. She stood up from the kitchen table, walking over to where Dylan was seated. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure this out, together. But you need to be careful, Dylan. This isn't just about business anymore. Whoever is behind this might know more than we think." Dylan nodded. "I'll have the team look into it. We need to track down where this came from. If it's internal, we're in real trouble." As the days passed, Dylan and Emma worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. They launched an internal investigation into the company's operations and examined every email, every document. But despite their best efforts, they couldn't pinpoint the source of the leak. The more they dug, the more the investigation seemed to lead to dead ends. It was as though someone was always one step ahead of them. One morning, as Dylan sat at his desk, sifting through legal documents, he received an unexpected call. It was from Zoe. "Dad, I've been doing some research for a school project, and I found something that might be important." Her voice was urgent. Dylan was taken aback. "What do you mean, Zoe?" "There's a company, one that deals with data security and tech compliance," she explained. "I found a connection to a former employee of your company. It looks like they were involved in some shady dealings, and I think it could be tied to the person who's trying to bring you down." Dylan was stunned. Zoe had always been sharp, but this was beyond anything he expected. "Who are they? Can you send me the details?" Within minutes, Dylan received the information. Zoe had managed to uncover a name, a former contractor who had worked briefly with the company. The contractor had been let go years ago, but it seemed there had been unresolved issues with his performance. Dylan's heart sank as he remembered the man, someone he hadn't thought about in a long time. He felt a cold sense of realization creeping over him. The person behind the sabotage wasn't just some faceless hacker, it was someone who knew him personally, someone who had once been part of his world. Dylan wasted no time contacting his legal team and security experts. After a thorough investigation, they confirmed that the former contractor, a man named Lucas Harding, had been using his insider knowledge to plant the fraudulent data and create the appearance of financial misconduct. Lucas had disappeared shortly after his termination, and Dylan had assumed he was just another disgruntled employee. But it became clear now that Lucas had been planning his revenge for years. He had infiltrated the company's systems, gathering confidential information, and was now using it to destroy everything Dylan had worked for. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. Dylan clenched his fists. "We fight back. We expose him for what he's doing, and we make sure he can never hurt anyone again." They worked quickly, gathering all the evidence they could find to build a case against Lucas. Dylan was determined to see justice done, no matter what it took. His company, his family, and his future were on the line. This time, he wouldn't let anyone tear it all down. With the evidence in hand, Dylan and his team took immediate action. They reported Lucas to the authorities, who launched a full investigation. The more they uncovered about his activities, the more sinister it became. Lucas had not only tried to sabotage Dylan's company but had been involved in illegal activities outside of the business as well. It seemed that his bitterness had driven him to the edge, and he was willing to destroy everything in his path. The authorities arrested Lucas, and within days, he was facing serious charges, including hacking, fraud, and conspiracy. Dylan watched as the man who had once been a part of his team was led away in handcuffs, his world crumbling around him. Dylan felt a strange sense of closure, but also a sense of relief. This chapter of his life, filled with betrayal and loss, had finally come to an end. He had fought hard, and now, he was free to move forward without the shadows of his past looming over him. In the aftermath of the scandal, Dylan and Emma worked tirelessly to restore the company's reputation. The damage had been significant, but with hard work and transparency, they managed to rebuild trust with investors and customers. Their commitment to excellence, and to each other, saw them through the toughest of times. As Dylan sat in his office one evening, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, he couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He had lost so much, but he had gained so much more: his children, his business, and the love and support of Emma. "I think we've earned a vacation," Emma said, walking into the office and breaking his thoughts. Dylan looked up at her and smiled. "I think you're right. Let's take a break. Together." With the past behind them, Dylan and Emma decided it was time to take a step forward, this time, not just as business partners, but as a family. They began planning a future that would be focused on growth, happiness, and love. As they moved forward into this new chapter of their lives, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The lessons of the past had taught them the importance of loyalty, trust, and resilience. And now, with Emma by his side, Dylan was finally able to look toward the future with a heart full of hope. As the months passed, Dylan, Emma, and the children grew even closer. With the business now running smoothly after the fallout with Lucas, Dylan had more time to focus on the things that truly mattered. The pressure of constantly fighting for survival had lifted, and now he was finally able to enjoy the rewards of his hard work. One weekend, Dylan and Emma took the kids on a trip to the mountains. It was the first real vacation they'd taken since the chaos of the past few years, and it felt like a breath of fresh air for everyone. They hiked together, laughed, and reconnected with the simplicity of life. In the evenings, sitting by the fire, Dylan reflected on how far he had come. When he first started rebuilding his life, he had no idea where the path would lead. But now, with Emma by his side, and his children thriving, he knew that he had created something that was worth fighting for. During one of those quiet nights, while they were watching the stars, Dylan turned to Emma. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if none of this had happened? If Ryan hadn't betrayed me, if Lucas hadn't tried to destroy everything?" Emma looked at him thoughtfully. "I used to wonder about that. But then I realized that everything we've gone through, every hardship, has made us who we are today. If we hadn't faced those challenges, we wouldn't be as strong, as close, as we are now." Dylan smiled, his heart full. You're right. I'm grateful for where we are now. Even if the road was hard, it led us to this moment. And I wouldn't change a thing. One evening, as they returned from their trip, Dylan surprised Emma with a special dinner. He had planned it for weeks, a quiet evening at home, just the two of them. As they enjoyed their meal, Dylan reached across the table and took her hand. Emma, he began, his voice soft but steady. When I started this journey, I had no idea where it would lead. But I knew that I wanted to build something real. With you, with the kids. I want to continue building, not just a business, but a life, a family. And I want to make a promise to you, a commitment to keep moving forward, no matter what challenges come our way. Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with love. I've made that same promise to you, Dylan. To keep moving forward, to never give up, to face whatever comes next with you. Dylan smiled and got up from his chair. He walked over to the mantel and pulled out a small, elegant box. He returned to the table, kneeling in front of Emma. I've never been good at asking for help, Emma, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I know now that I don't need to do this alone. Will you marry me, and let's continue building this life together, as partners in every sense of the word? Emma's face lit up, and she laughed softly, tears welling in her eyes. Of course I will, Dylan. I've always known that we're meant to be. They embraced, sealing their commitment to each other, to their family, and to the future they were going to build together. In that moment, Dylan knew that no matter what the future held, he had found his place. He had found the love, the stability, and the joy he had longed for all these years. Dylan and Emma's wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair. They invited close friends and family, those who had been there through the trials and tribulations of their journey. Zoe and Jack stood proudly by their sides, the family now complete in a way that felt full of promise and love. The wedding wasn't just a celebration of their love, it was a symbol of everything they had been through and everything they had overcome. They had faced betrayal, loss, and sabotage, but they had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Dylan looked around at the people he loved, realizing that he had finally come home. The pain of the past, though it would never be completely gone, no longer controlled him. He had made peace with it, and now he could look to the future with hope. Years passed, and the company continued to thrive under Dylan and Emma's leadership. They expanded their reach globally, innovating and staying ahead of the competition. Dylan, once consumed by the weight of the world, now found balance. He spent more time with his children, teaching them the lessons he had learned the hard way, about loyalty, perseverance, and the importance of family. Zoe and Jack grew up to be well-rounded, strong individuals, each finding their own paths in life. They were both proud of their father, and Dylan was proud of them. They were, after all, his legacy. Dylan and Emma also built a foundation, dedicating time and resources to causes that mattered to them. They became mentors to young entrepreneurs, sharing their story with others who were facing their own challenges. On the quiet evenings when the kids were away at college or with friends, Dylan and Emma sat on the porch of their home, reminiscing about their journey. They had come so far, through struggles and victories, always side by side. Do you ever think about how it all started? Emma asked one evening as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. Dylan smiled. All the time. And I wouldn't change a thing. Because every single step, every mistake, every victory, brought me to this moment. With you. Emma rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat in silence, content with the life they had built. The road ahead was uncertain, but Dylan knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. And so, Dylan's journey comes full circle, his resilience, his love, and his dedication to rebuilding his life and business have led him to a place of peace. But as we all know, life is full of surprises, and the future is always uncertain. What will happen next for Dylan and his family? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think of Dylan's journey? What lessons did you take away from his experiences? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new chapter in this incredible journey. We have more stories like this coming soon, and we can't wait to share them with you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and keep building your own story.